Welcome to the Masters of Resilience podcast. This show is an exploration of the unseen and unheard stories of adversity that shape the journeys of high performers. These conversations will help you better understand the mindset, habits, and behaviors that empower these exceptional leaders to endure the most challenging moments of their careers and emerge stronger than ever. Your hosts are Ryan Seager and Mark Phillips. Let's dive in to more.
Thanks for joining us on the Masters of Resilience podcast. Today we're joined by Jon Reiner, who leads one of the top specialty insurance teams in the country. And he does it with a mix of intensity, clarity, and humility that's hard to find. In today's conversation, we talk about what it takes to build and lead a team where high performance isn't optional. It's the standard. Jon shares how he's built a culture that stays ready for whatever comes their way, not by fearing worst case scenarios, but by staying disciplined, anticipating challenges, and keeping people sharp. We also get into the personal side, how he protects time, why family anchors everything he does, and what it looks like to stay grounded when life gets busy and the pressure's on. If you have a passion for building resilient teams, you'll find great insights in this episode. If you find value in this conversation, share it with a friend, give us a rating on whichever listening platform you're utilizing. That helps us grow immensely. Let's dig into the conversation with Jon. Jon, but thanks for joining us on the Masters of Resilience podcast. We're excited to have you. I know you've built an incredible business, so we'd love to dive into that a little bit as we get started. Just what you built with RT Specialty, one of the leaders in executive lines insurance and the wholesale side. So why don't we start with what it's been like building that team for the last decade or so and dive into all details surrounding that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you having me. I feel really fortunate to be a sort of the representative of an amazing team. I certainly don't take credit for all of it myself at all. But we've had a really unique journey, starting all the way back in 2010, really. We're creeping on a little over 15 years as a company and as a team. It started, I worked for another producer the first year or so after we joined RT Specialty, who I learned a lot from. And shortly after that, broke off and started my own production team. And I hired two people right out of college, one that I had played baseball with and I knew pretty well, and then one who I didn't know at all. And both of them, I'm so fortunate, are still with me today and have been such instrumental pieces of what we've built. After about 6 months as a team, I had the great fortune of partnering up with my best friend from college, and he was working on a different production team, and the two of us joined forces. And so there was four people, which, at the time was considered a pretty large sales team. Now, in today's standards, not necessarily. But one thing the four of us recognized really quickly was there are certain portions of the business we're really, really good at, and there are certain areas where we're totally weak and exposed. And I think being humble enough to recognize that you aren't possibly the best at everything, and being aware enough to know you need to surround yourself with people that are better than you at something has always been sort of a character trait of us as a group that we always prioritize. And, flash forward 15 years later and 80 plus people on the team, and we still think that way. So that was a principle I think we instituted from the very beginning. But a lot has happened on the journey. A lot of great stuff. Even the hard times have been great for us because they've made us better. They've made us stronger. And I think, if we were to write down in 2010 what makes us different, who we want to be, what our core principles are, they'd mirror what they are today. And that's something I think that we're really, really proud of.
So if you look at the last 15 years, I'm sure there's probably plenty of things you can point to. What would you say was one of the hardest things in building where you're at today?
Yeah, I think the hardest things are always the uncontrollables. I think you can adapt to anything that's within your control pretty quickly, but it's the stuff that hits you when you're not expecting it. So, I can use a couple examples. Certainly the pandemic for everyone, that's very relatable. Our business works in market cycles. So, there's peaks of time where the market's what we consider hard. So rates are at an extreme high, simple economics, supply and demand. And then there's other times where it's the complete opposite, where the market's really soft. And we went through a really interesting market shift coming out of sort of 2021, 2022. So just a few years ago, where the market went from the hardest it's ever been to the softest it's ever been. And it happened like, it felt like overnight. I mean, it was really probably a 6-month period where we saw that acceleration, but it was somewhat shocking. And I would say that that was probably, one of the hardest times to manage a team through, to find ways to keep the ship moving in the right direction, keep momentum going, keep positivity. So I would use that as an example, Ryan, of a time that was, really, really challenging and difficult.
So tell us more about that. You have a team at that point. You probably have a team of what, 60, 70
Yeah,
plus?
probably somewhere in the 60s, somewhere in
So
that.
what do you do when you have 60 other people that are looking to Jon saying, okay, what do we do? Things are shutting down. What steps do we take?
Yeah. I think one thing I've always prided myself on, and I think, the other leaders on the team, my business partner, Pat, we've always sort of felt like we do a lot to prepare for the worst. Like we think through what is the worst case scenario in basically every area of our business. We try to like test our own vulnerabilities. And, it's a bit of paranoia, but that paranoia has served us really well. And candidly, I think that paranoia has served us really well in so many different parts of how we transact business. It's a healthy paranoia. And, the market shifting wasn't a new phenomenon that had occurred for, decades in different market cycles. So we knew that was certainly coming. And, we didn't realize the pace at which it was going to come because nobody could have predicted that, but we knew it was inevitable. And we had started to institute new strategies in the background that we knew we could bring to light to the team once the market sort of shifted. And we did that. And, I think anything great in life, you got to take some level of risk, and you have to have confidence that if you believe in yourself and you're taking a risk, you can get through it, you can do it. And, we talk about team. When you've got a great team in front of you and around you, it makes it a lot easier to feel comfortable taking those risks. So the answer, I guess, Ryan, is, we instituted a lot of new strategies that we had never implemented before. And we believed in those strategies, and we knew there was some level of risk involved in it. But in order for the team to get behind you in those situations, you have to believe in it. You have to honestly, firmly believe that on the other end of the crap is going to be something really great. And if you don't believe it, there's no way they're going to believe in it. So, I think that was the solution for us, and it ended up panning out, better than we thought. And here we are on the other side of it, and everything's going fantastic.
Jon, you talked about having these people that you've been running with for 15 years now. What, in your estimation as the leader of the organization, is the power of retention? Keeping the people that you already have on board. What is the native knowledge that they have? How much value does that present to you and to the organization as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, retention's critical. I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, actually. It's everybody wants to create a work environment that's the best place to work. Everybody's like, yeah, we wanted this to be the best place to work. And I'd add a caveat to that. And I think this is something that plays into retention. I want this to be the best place to work for high performers, for high performers. And the reason is, when it's the best place to work for everyone, the low performers drag down the high performers, and the high performers look at the low performers being enabled and they say, this isn't the best place to work for me. So when it comes to retention, I think something we're outrageously proud of is retention of high performers. I think that's what we look at. And we say, is this the best place to work if you're great? Is this where you can achieve and accomplish the most and be a part of something special and have a great financial future and feel rewarded by your work? And so we talk about retention. Yeah, I'm incredibly proud that, my business partners today are a lot of the same people on my team that we've had for 15 years. And we've added so many talented people along the way that have added so much to our model. But I think about being the best place to work, and I think about it being the best place to work for the people who want to do the most work and do the best work.
Yeah. And that you want on board with you,
Totally.
quite frankly. What are the attributes of that type of culture?
Yeah. I mean, I think, fundamentally, and how we've separated ourselves is our intensity. If you don't take this work seriously, like really, really seriously, and take pride in the results you're delivering for your client, you're never going to impress a client. You're never going to retain a client. And so we look for those character traits of intensity, passion. You got to be smart, right? Not necessarily have the highest ACT score smart, but you have to be smart in terms of your ability to adapt, in terms of your ability to retain information, in terms of your ability to communicate that information to a client and help them understand it and deliver that information. So passion, intensity, those are top of the list. If you're not pumped up about this work and you're not just generally a pumped up person, you're not going to be successful here. You're not, you just won't, you won't feel like you fit.
So in those moments, do you have prerequisites of, hey, these are the attributes before anyone even walks in the door that they need to obtain? Or do you coach some of that along the way?
We look for those character traits in the interview process. Not all of them you can see on a resume. I mean, certainly, sometimes you can. Like, for example, we've got a lot of athletes on our team, right? Athletes know how to manage a schedule. They know how to work as a team. They know how to operate under pressure. They know how to learn from a coach and get better. But we've got a lot of people on our team that are intense and passionate that I looking at a resume, I wouldn't have been able to see it. But when you engage with them in an interview, if they're nervous, that's good. That means they care, right? You look at them and they're like red in the face and sweating a little bit. That means that they're taking this seriously. They want this really badly. That's passion, right? That's intensity. Sometimes they might not have been the best at a sport, but they were amazing at something. And that's what you want to see, is somebody that has that pursuit of excellence in their DNA. So we constantly look for that during the process of who we recruit and hire. And, oftentimes we've had the great fortune of hiring a lot of underwriters that we work with, and we can feel that in the trades, and underwriting is a lot different than broking in the sense that, the underwriters are taking risk and they don't have the same pressure necessarily on every transaction that the broker might have. But if the underwriter takes it as seriously as you're taking it, you can feel that intensity. You can feel that they care. They want to deliver a great result or solution for you. So those are all things that during the process of who we decide are great fits for our team, we have our eyes wide open on. And I think a great lesson we learned along the way too is sometimes you find those character traits and in people that you would have never expected it. You can meet somebody at a grocery store tomorrow that you're like, whoa, this person's pumped up. They're motivated. They're hungry. They're passionate. They might have a totally different resume than the typical person on our team, but why don't they deserve a shot? So if you look at the folks here in my office, there's lots of different backgrounds, but the one sort of homogeneous trait amongst all of them is they're all intense. They're all passionate.
Wow. How do you find that intensity? You talked about finding it in unexpected places. Is it a set of questions that you're asking? Or maybe back to something you said a few minutes ago, John, which is it's believing in the work as much yourself as you're asking anyone else to do with you. Is it the energy you're putting out into the world? Or are you asking them specific questions to get to the heart of their motivation?
I think it's a combination of both, Mark. I mean, I think during that process when, you're engaging with somebody, you can tell whether they're looking you in the eyes or not, or whether you can feel their energy. You can feel whether or not, they've got it right here in the chest. And we try to ask specific questions that'll help motivate responses that allow us to identify that passion.
So once you get high performers in that seat, John, how do you decide as a leader, like what to spend your time on, what like what to allow them to do versus you do? How do you decipher between what roles you take on when you have those people in the right seats?
Yeah. I mean, I think in order for people to grow, they have to be in an environment where the leader supports their growth and is giving them the resources to grow and the resources and space to fail too. The only way they're going to get better is if I use sports analogies all the time, but you're not going to hit home runs if you don't get at bats. So you got to give them opportunities to demonstrate that they have the capabilities. The only way you're going to feel comfortable doing that is if you believe in them, is if you think they've got it, right? So I never fool myself. I try not to, at least. I give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes I see it and other people don't see it, and they're like, can't believe you gave that at bat to that person. I'm like, well, I think they've got it. Let's find out. And I think as a leader, it's about putting them on the stage and in the spotlight and being there to support them, and if they've got a problem, you have to have their back. You have to show them that that you have their back. They have to trust that you have their back. I mean, that's such an important part of the process of helping people succeed.
So when somebody fails, and I know all three of us can speak into this, but failure is a tough thing to swallow, but also recognizing that it's so important on the path. What do you do? How do you handle that as a leader when you have people that say, hey, we failed in this aspect, and maybe, hopefully it's not as catastrophic as whatever the reality ends up being, but how do you handle that as a leader with those people when the failure happens?
Yeah, I think part of the evolution as a leader is maturing into knowing and accepting that failure is a possibility. And I think preparation in advance, like I talked about before, on how you respond to if things don't go the way you were hoping they would go. What's your safety valve? Like where's the other solution that will pick that person back up, save the account, save the client? There always has to be that thought process going into it that let's underwrite the worst case scenario. Let's underwrite if we fail, and let's figure out what we're going to do if we do fail. And if you have that plan in advance, you know how to quickly react and adapt. I think supporting people when they fail is part of the maturity as a leader and evolution as a leader. Earlier on in my career, and you're only as strong as your team, and you can only grow as big as you'll allow your team to fail, really. And earlier on in my career, I was, like your prototypical micromanager. I wanted to be on every single email. I wanted to be on every call with every client. If something went sideways, I jumped right in. I took the ball and ran with it. And I realized if I do that on every account, we're not going to be able to scale up as a team, and my people aren't going to get better because it shows them that I don't have the confidence in them if I'm taking the ball every time, right? So I've learned along the way that I got to give them the room and the space to fail, and I also have to figure out what the worst case scenario is far in advance of it happening, so I can solve that problem with them after it does. And I think picking people up, just like in sports, is so important. I use baseball analogies again. You're going to have bad at bats, but if you walk back to the dugout and your coach is yelling at you the whole time and your teammates are trying to look away and not make eye contact with you, you're going to feel like a loser. And that next at bat's going to be impossible because you're just going to be like, it's just me versus the world and no one's got my back. And, it's really difficult to succeed. But if you get back to the dugout and the coach is like, hey, this is what you did wrong. This is what we're going to do right next time. You got this. And you get a pat on the back. You're going to be like hungry and pissed off in a good way to go find a way to get a hit the next at bat. So, I think part of being a leader is picking your team up and allowing them to pick you up too. I mean, you're not going to be perfect in every situation. Be humble enough to know if you failed as the leader. You have to criticize your performance. No one fails alone. That's just the truth. And if somebody makes a mistake on your team, it's your mistake. You have to own that mistake too. Right. And that doesn't mean you throw that person under the bus. You figure out a way out of it.
I think successful leaders, John, and I'm including you in that list, I think have this tendency of diminishing the hard work that they've done to get to the point where they are. So I'll be specific about what I mean. And it's really a question for you, which is how in those moments early on as a leader where you're like, I want to be on every call. I want to be solving all the problems, right? Like I'm the best at this. And to start the organization, you had to be, but then at some point you had to tell yourself, you had to convince yourself of some truth that basically sounded something like, if I can push this decision making down to those people around me, we're going to be in a better position overall.
Yeah.
I think that's really hard work. I think that's a really difficult mindset shift. That I'm in the world of early stage investing. And I think the number of startups where the founder never gets out of the way, whether it's because of ego or inability to grow or whatever you want to attribute it to, that process of like removing oneself as the leader from the day-to-day operations and from like taking new ground as a firm is really hard.
Yeah.
What did that work look like for you?
Well, it's a great question. I could kind of tie it back to two specific moments, I think, really.
Please.
One happened naturally. One was not well thought out or planned by me. I mentioned, one of my first hires was a guy that I played college baseball with, and he's one of the most senior people on the team. And candidly, I think he's better at this job than anybody I've ever met. And, the first year he was here, I was just all over him. I wrote him on everything. I was like probably way too tough and intense, but he's just such a winner. He just wanted to keep getting better, and he would, fall off the bike and just immediately get right back on it. And we had a situation where something was not going really well on a deal, and he was handling it. And I went to jump in, and he never confronted me on anything. He just wanted me to be a coach that helped get him better. And he responded to my email, and he just said, "Back off. I got this." And my initial reaction was like, I'm going to check him on this and be like, no, this is mine to solve. And I was like, whoa, holy cow. All right. Like, let's let him get this. And sure enough, like he fixed the problem like immediately and in a way that I didn't think of, which for me, I was like, whoa, that's really impressive. And after the problem was fixed, I called him and I apologized, and I got out of his way every issue we've ever had since then. And what I realized was he was capable and he was competent. And if I gave him the space to solve problems, he was going to solve problems. So I started testing him. And what I mean by testing him is I'd bring him problems that weren't even his problems. And I'd say, fix this and solve this. And he would fix them and solve them every time. And then I realized, oh my gosh, we have this absolute freak of an asset on the team that's going to allow us to scale up so much. I need to put my pride aside and just let this guy do his thing. And, that his recognizing that he created that awareness for me, but recognizing that and being not only okay with it, but endorsing it really helped me get to the next level for what I wanted to help the team accomplish and focus on other things that, I could use my time on, knowing I could trust him. And really it comes down to that dynamic is trust. Like, again, I flash back to what I mentioned earlier, like you're going to only get as big, your business is only going to get as big as the amount of space you give your people and trust, but you're only going to, be willing to give them the trust if you believe in them. And once, that guy, Jon, proved to me that he could do it, I believed in him forever. And I'm like, great. And I've watched that with so many other people on the team. And it also taught me, because he had this creative idea that I didn't have, like, I'm not that good. I'm not perfect. Like, somebody else is better than me at everything. So why not endorse that? Why be so proud to say I need to be the best at it? Because that holds the team back and that holds me back. So that was a really specific moment. And another one was, I would say this is probably like 2017. My business partner, Pat, and I we were both starting to settle down in life, and we had been running so hard, and we had kind of gotten to this like pinnacle of our revenue growth where we were like, holy cow, we're entering uncharted territory, but there was no balance in our lives. Like, I mean, we were working 16, 18-hour days, traveling 3-4 days a week. I was getting really serious with my girlfriend, now wife. And I'm like, if I'm going to be like one of those people in 10 years that has nothing else going on besides work. And I'm going to look back and be like, holy cow, that happened so fast, and be miserable. Like, that's just no way to go about how I want to build my life. And so we actually hired like a consultant, and we sat down with him, and he was critical in our growth. He was so helpful. And he said, all right, write down like everything you do for 2 weeks. Okay. And so like literally it was a brutal, process, but we wrote down every single task that we did for 2 weeks. And then we put all those in buckets, like in categories on a whiteboard. And we looked at the team and we said, who could we pass these buckets to that we trust is going to do just as good of a job with all this stuff as we are? And similar to that process I went through with Jon, towards the beginning, we went through that on a grander scale, and we empowered our team to take on way more responsibility. And we watched something beautiful happen in that process. Not only did they do as good of a job as we would have done, it empowered them to do a better job in it. And they took so much pride in the responsibility that they never dropped a ball ever. And so it allowed us to structure our team into going from a sales team to a business. And it allowed myself and Pat to focus on what we believed we were the best at for the team. And we've scaled our business in that capacity ever since. And when we constantly have our eyes open, looking at the character traits of our employees and getting feedback from their peers and from, the people above them on the team on what are they great at? And we want to give them so much leash on what they're great at to really, move into those roles and responsibilities. So I would say, Mark, those were probably the two most critical moments in our development, and personally for me with the team.
And Jon, just the humility to bring someone in, spend your dollars and cents on a consultant. And I've had the same experience, and it's been trajectory altering.
For sure.
Can you just speak a little bit about that decision? Again, I think you gloss over it as if it was simple, but like that's real money. And it sounds like it was money well spent.
Super well spent. Again, it ties back to the, we don't believe we're the best. We believe we're always getting better philosophy. And if you lose sight of that at any point, that's the second you start shrinking. That's like the beginning of your death. And so that was just a natural thought for us. And we even took it one step further. I talk about sort of the chapters in our evolution. In 2022, we brought on a full-time operations leader. And this was, I talk about an instrumental moment. This guy, first off, if he wanted to be a broker, a salesperson, he could have been and could be, one of the best we've ever seen. So we had the DNA that really fit our culture, which was really important. But even more so than that, he was a better critical thinker than I am and that Pat was. And he pressure tested our model in every way. Like, how can we improve? How can we make this more efficient? How can we do more of this? How can we, and by asking all those questions and then having so many great ideas and solutions to those, he was able to implement so many, awesome synergies in our business and create so much organic growth from it. So we talk about hiring a consultant for a short period of time, but hiring somebody to run our operations and sort of help us, use the term level up, Ryan, like that took us to a whole nother stratosphere in terms of how we operate our business. And, I think, again, goes back to recognizing where you're weak. That's not my area of strength. I know it. And I need to always surround myself with people that are better than me in the areas where I'm weak. And I think, hopefully I bring some strengths to areas where maybe they feel they're not as strong, and it allows us to operate really well as a leadership team.
I think that unfinished idea is such an important one. I think it's such an important framework to have. And one of the books, I know Mark would echo this, but there's been instrumental for both of us, is Jim Collins' How the Mighty Fall.
So
and again, you're building a business, and again, I know all of us would say we're unfinished and a long way from any targets that we want to hit. But once you get to a point where, I hesitate to use the word cruising altitude, but you're at a good place, what are the things that you guys have done to try to stay there? I think the humility piece is huge that you hit on. I think when people start to lose some of that humility, then they have this, what Collins calls the undisciplined pursuit of more. We want to chase all these things and you do too much at one time. So how do you guys keep that in mind?
Well, I mentioned paranoia, healthy paranoia earlier in the dialogue. And I think, um, the fact that we worry, like, I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes just thinking about things with my business that aren't a problem right now, but could potentially be one. The second you stop that worrying is when you expose yourself, and I think, we obsess over recon. We spend so much time in the market just asking questions, asking what our competitors are doing, but even more than what our competitors are doing, it's what are our clients' needs and what are their needs that they don't even know about yet. We try to identify those. That's where we really target our paranoia. What can we bring to our clients that are going to make them value us as part of the value chain even more? And so I think about that, Ryan. I think about the pursuit of excellence I think it starts at the top. I don't think I'm the sole, leader of that, but I think our whole team of senior leaders brings the same intensity. And I love this quote because I think it's a great quote. I heard it from Pat Ryan. I'm not sure who said it first, probably him. But the speed of the team moves at the speed of its leader. And so the second you start going in that, like, oh, I've accomplished everything mode and I'm going to take my foot off the gas and whatnot, everyone else will slow down. So I think, what motivates me now personally might be different than what motivated me 15 years ago, but you have to bring that intensity for your team every single day. You owe it to them. So I think that's sort of been our recipe for avoiding that, feeling like we've accomplished it all sort of mentality. And there's so much more room to grow. Until we write every account, we haven't accomplished it all.
That's right. What's the hardest thing about leadership for you right now, Jon?
Hardest thing. I mean, I think, it's all hard. If you take it seriously and you care about it, it's all hard. Every one of the buckets to leadership has its own challenges, whether that's personnel and dealing with emotions and dealing with, having a lot of employees, more people, more problems. But I think when you hire the right people and everybody's motivated by the same goal of being the best and, getting to that sort of amazing result for the client every single time, it makes it a lot easier. I think balancing family and work is always a challenge. I think everybody faces that challenge. I had this conversation with Pat, my business partner, the other day. We were both on the road for like 3 days, and I looked over at him. I'm like, geez, I miss my family. And he's like, yeah, me too. And he's like, I thought this was a great quote. He's like, the second you're on the road and you're not missing your family, that makes you a bad dad and a bad husband. And the second you're just in the office or just sitting on your couch all day and not worrying about work and your clients, that makes you a bad employee and a bad leader. So it's finding that balance where you are able to satisfy both. And, as long as you care immensely and prioritize your family first, you'll always be able to make that happen. But it's certainly a challenging thing. I think that hopefully everybody, I think most people face that. Other challenges of being a leader, I think the unpredictable, like I mentioned, the uncontrollable, you try to prepare for the worst case scenario all the time, but something inevitably in our market, and Ryan knows as well, it happens so quickly. And sometimes, our clients are getting acquired, our competitors are acquiring people, markets are exiting, they're entering. There's just so much that shifts so quickly. So just managing to the uncontrollable, I think, is a big challenge as well.
So talking about the family, the balance aspect, and I think balance is a tricky word. I haven't arrived on what the right word is, whether it's like cohesion or balance, or oftentimes it's not balanced. But walk us through, Jon, how you navigate that. I mean, again, you're sitting on a significant leadership team of a very prominent firm in the insurance industry. You're running your own team of 80 plus people. How do you deal with fatherhood, being a good husband, continuing to build an awesome business? It's like there's so many things that pull at you. How do you handle that?
Yeah, no, it's an ever going struggle, but I feel I feel proud of, how I've done so far. I feel like I could keep getting better. A lot of it has to do with being comfortable saying no. And I think a lot of people have that challenge, right? Like, you're not going to make every meeting and be on every call and be at every dinner and also be at every T-ball game. So like my priority is being at the T-ball game, and I'm going to do everything in my power to shift that meeting time to make it home so I can be at the T-ball game. Right. So I think being comfortable saying like, I might miss a dinner, I might miss a meeting, and that's okay. That's something that, you just have to, that comes with the territory. You just have to be okay with. Managing your calendar is really important too. I mean, I'm ultra disciplined when it comes to my calendar. I'm ultra disciplined. So I'm not.
What does that mean? What does that mean specifically, John? I'm fascinated by that.
Well, if you pulled up my September right now, you'd see that I have a ton of business travel planned. I have my personal stuff all planned. I have probably my workouts even scheduled for, 5 months from now. And I obsess over my calendar. And that's the only way where I feel like I can, do it all. Like, for example, I'm taking my son today to a 3:30 Northwestern Wildcats baseball game. And I've had that in my calendar since their schedule went out. Right. And I think scheduling personal time is really, really important. Like, I'm taking my son fishing on a Saturday in 3 weeks from now, and I put in an hour in my calendar that I'm going to do that. And when I put something in my calendar, I live to it. It happens, because you're going to get that random client call that pops up on a Friday afternoon or a Tuesday or whatnot. And you need to be able to have the discipline to prioritize what's important to you. And if you don't have it in your calendar, you'll look back on the week and say, I was a bad dad, or I was a bad husband, and I didn't do any of the things I knew I needed to do. So I think penciling those things in for me has been really helpful. And, I'm not perfect at it at all. I'm just always trying to stay focused on it and get better at it.
I think it might have been founder of Netflix, maybe Mark Randolph or somebody, but I think it was like a Tuesday, and he had a standing meeting with his wife at, dinner at 5 p.m. And it's like, all right, if you come with me with the largest problem that Netflix would face, you better catch me on my walk to the car, because it's not interrupting that time. And I think that's such a good example, because I think I think it's the tendency, especially when it's business building, or it's like, you flex on the things that you say matter the most, but oftentimes that flex speaks louder than whatever you've claimed that thing to be.
Yeah.
Totally. I think we all have control over our calendars. We all have the ability to say yes or no to whatever we get invited to. But if you put the priorities in there and you schedule time for them, they're far more likely to happen.
John, has there been someone in your life that you've drafted off of? I just really appreciate the intentionality you bring to leadership. And I don't think it's necessarily intrinsic. Maybe in some folks that it is, but for me, certainly there's a drafting mechanism that's been required. What's your experience been like?
Oh my God, I'm the luckiest in the world when it comes to having leaders to watch. I mean, I feel like I've got a front row seat to some of the greatest leaders in the history of our business, maybe any business. So, and the fact that they've all taken the time to like help me, and coach me. But I think I've learned the most just from watching them and how they, I use Tim Turner. He's the CEO of our company, and just an incredible human being. And he taught me so many principles early on that I've kept with me today. Like one easy one is just attack at dawn, wake up early in the morning. Like that is stuck. I mean, I wake up really early. I accomplish a lot really early in the morning. It allows me to be better throughout, the whole day. I've learned so much from him. Terry McCann, another great leader in our company. I've had been so privileged to watch him. And, I think just his ability to handle adversity and like make amazing decisions in the toughest times so quickly, and dissect a problem so fast. I've been able to watch obviously Pat Ryan, who is, a complete legend, and watch what he's done and built, and learned so much from just watching him as well. So I feel so privileged. I know there's a lot of people that come into every business and like there's like leaders at their company, but they're not necessarily people they respect or look up to or admire. And I feel like I've just got, take my pick of great leaders in front of me that I can learn from. And, I'm always learning more from them, which is awesome.
Do you think folks kind of expect too much from leaders ahead of them, in the sense of what you just said is really intriguing, because it's not that they're sitting down with, I mean, it sounds like largely they are, but you attribute a lot of your growth to just watching, observing, like wanting to, through osmosis, adopt the things that they're bringing to the table and what makes them such great leaders. Do you think young leaders, people that are trying to come on the up and up, expect too much from the leaders ahead of them and maybe could just learn more by watching carefully?
Yeah, I do, Mark, actually. I mean, I feel like everybody wants like some formal mentorship program for their career.
Sit
And like,
down,
that's
take
just like
notes.
a pamphlet that says like every 6 months I get this check mark and whatnot.
Yes.
I mean, if you're truly a student of the game, and that's what I try to be, a student of the game, you're going to have your eyes open in every scenario and you're going to pick and take little things from people along the way. And that's mentorship. That's mentorship. It doesn't need to be a 1-hour therapy session every Tuesday for it to be mentorship. And I try to hopefully set that example, with my team. And I hope they watch my habits and behaviors. I'm not perfect, but I think there's things they can hopefully learn from. Cause I mean, that's been just such a great way for me to learn, is by watching with my eyes open, saying like, that works. I want to do that. Like that's the thing you should do to get people to follow you. Certainly totally agree with that.
Love that. Yeah, it's really good.
And so for those that are younger, John, how did you put yourself in those spots to glean those things from those people?
Yeah. I mean, listen, performance is like, I think, again, we talked about high performers, like every leader is going to allocate their time, greatly to their highest return on it, which is their high performers. And I think if you put your head down and you focus on doing a great job and performing, and what those metrics and triggers are for performance, and you focus on getting to there, you're going to get people's attention. I'll tie back to the sports analogy, but if you're hitting 40 home runs a year, the coach is going to be like, whoa, we should probably put that person in the lineup. Like they give us a chance to win. And so I think focusing on your work and doing an amazing job at it, you're going to get on the attention, you're going to get on the radar of leaders and get their attention, and hopefully get, the ability to learn a lot from them.
And on the topic of staying at that, operating at that high level, what have you found to be helpful when it comes to, kind of like replenishing yourself to staying at that level? Like what are like the tangibles that you found to be like, oh man, this, like whether it's working out or it's, a few nuggets that have been pillars for you, what's been successful?
I think a few things I require just to stay like healthy and sharp. Like I need sleep. Some people I think can operate on little sleep. I've never been that person. I'm grumpy and crabby, and I don't bring as much to my team every day and my clients every day if I'm not rested. I need like 7-8 hours of great sleep. I need to wake up early. Like I have to be up and getting after it, and like looking through all my tasks for the day, going through my calendar, making sure I'm prepared for all my meetings, and then getting a great workout in. I exercise 6 days a week religiously, pretty much no matter what. I think for me, another big thing has just been like limiting alcohol intake. Like I'm not a big drinker. I pick my spots on when I ever, I'm going to have a drink or not. And it's pretty infrequent, but I think it's been an edge for me, candidly, because, so many of my competitors, they're hungover in the morning and they can't dominate. You can't do both. You can't, go out late every night, drinking a bunch, and then waking up the next morning and being at the top of your game. It also impacts my sleep, my exercise. I feel exhausted and I'm not going to be as good of a dad, and I think like all those things play into it for me. So I'm really conscious about that. I think spending time with my family, it's another category that like I need in order to be the best of my job, because that's enjoyment for me. I think you talked about getting the energy out of the world that you put into it earlier, Mark. And I think, I'm a way better leader if I'm in a great mood all the time. And I think people are attracted to people and want to be around people that are in a great mood. and my family puts me in a great mood. So I know I need to do that to be effective here. And, I think those are sort of the key areas, Ryan, where for me, I live to that discipline. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have a day where you needed to catch an earlier flight and you didn't get a workout in. But it's about consistency during a long period of time. And that's where you'll start to see the results in your performance.
Well, John, as we start to wrap here, what keeps you sharp? It sounds like obviously your routine is an important one, but like books or other content things that you absorb, what do you feel like helps you mentally kind of sharpen the axe, so to speak?
I mean, I'll read some books and listen to some podcasts and things like that. Like I'm listening to the Sahil Bloom 5 Types of Wealth right now, which I think is awesome. But I'm not one of those people who obsesses over books and podcasts. I think, I like to use my idle time to blow off steam, exercise. I'll listen to music, I love to do a lot of thinking. Like I'm constantly thinking, about my business, about ways we can improve. I'm thinking through ways we can find ways to grow, how I can help the people on my team, all that kind of stuff. So
how do you do that? Is that like you're quiet? Or you listening to something? You're walking? Like, what do you do?
I run like 3 days a week, and I'm during the entirety of my run, I'm just thinking and mostly just thinking about work. And so I do it then. I mean, I'm in a lot of, Ubers on the way to an airport or on a lot of flights. And if I'm not on my laptop, I'm not watching a movie or something, I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about how to get better. So I think I learn a lot from challenging, myself and my team. And I think certainly books and podcasts, I think a lot that checks the box for a lot of people. I probably could read more, but not necessarily a huge part of my routine.
So if you had to rewind the clock 15 plus years ago and give Jon Reiner some guidance as he's building this business, what would you say?
Oh, geez, I don't think I have enough time for that. Made a lot of mistakes along the way. I'll tell you that for sure. I think the biggest advice I'd give myself as a leader back then is just to be patient, and give people the benefit of the doubt. I think as like an immature leader, you let emotion get the best of you. And I've made that mistake for sure. I think everybody does at some point in their life. I learned a lot of good habits to help prevent that along the way. One, having a business partner who's like incredibly level-headed that I can just immediately bounce ideas off of. And rather than reacting, having an outlet that's sensible. I mean, that's been you talk about your own personal growth as a leader. If you have a partner who's incredibly good at areas where you're incredibly weak, you make yourself so much better. And, that's an area where I think about, what I would tell myself 15 years ago is when emotions are running high and you're ready to flip out and react, where there could be a potential negative reaction to it. Take a step back, send that email that you wanted to send to whoever it was to yourself, and then read it 5 times. And then what you're going to end up doing is just deleting it. And I learned that trick. And more often than not, I'll send the email on what I want to say to Pat. And I'll be like, what do you think? And 100% of the time he's going to come back and say, delete that part. That's not what you want to say. And it's okay not to react right away. It's okay to give yourself a night's sleep on something before you respond. And I think that goes with your employees too. Like, people on your team are going to screw up. You're going to screw up. Like, that's how things go. You can't control that every time, but you can control how you respond to that. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a lesson that I'm always trying to get better at. I'm certainly still in evolution on that, but I think I would have told myself 15 years ago, chill out, be patient, take a step back, write that email to yourself, think about it overnight, talk to somebody else about it, and then respond rather than letting emotions get the best of you.
It's a good word.
Well, John, I think this has been fantastic. Thanks for your wisdom and guidance. I know we're all aspiring to build good teams, and you've clearly done that. So we appreciate you spending the afternoon with us with your insights.
I appreciate you having me, and I'm really proud of my team. I just really am. I just think they're the most amazing group of people, and we all did it together. We all led together, and we keep leading together. So anytime I get to brag about them, publicly, I welcome it. So if you'll have me back tomorrow to talk about them again, I'll do it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to be proud of. So
Yeah,
I love it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, John. Thanks for spending time with us.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for engaging with this episode of the Masters of Resilience podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend or colleague. Stay up to date on all the latest episodes and get exclusive resources at mastersofresilience.com. We'll see you next time.